Recording in progress.
We're on.
All right, we'll call to order at 6:04. And
Jay, I'll throw the agenda up if it's helpful.
sure. And do we have any audience participation?
We have Chris Conway.
All right.
I've heard of him.
Chris
Pete
and Pete are
Lawson's
both
here.
here with us tonight.
Chris and Pete, great when we get to high school. All right.
That's
good
it.
to know. Okay, moving on to meeting minutes. We have one set from Don. He did get some revisions. Geetha had some revisions. I had sent some for 7:25. If anyone wants to make a motion to approve those.
I'll move to approve as amended.
Chris. Second, anyone?
Second.
Thank you, John. All right, so we have Frank.
Got to do, roll call, right?
Roll
Yep.
call, right?
Aye.
Okay. Brian?
Yes.
Todd?
Sorry. Aye.
Aye. Geetha?
Aye.
And John was second. Colleen?
Aye.
And Mark?
Aye.
All right, so the meeting minutes are approved. Next, we have to re-vote to confirm the delivery method. Meg confirmed with Mary Ellen that because it wasn't on the agenda. Is that correct, Meg? We have to redo it?
Yes, that's correct, because it wasn't listed as an action item. Mary Ellen, the town clerk, didn't feel like it was official, so we just have to redo the vote that you guys had at our last meeting.
Okay. Can we get a motion?
I'm happy to move, just as we discussed at the last meeting, that we procure the Lynch project under a design bid build method with the general contractor.
Second.
Who was that? Brian?
That was Brian. Yep.
Yep, Brian, thank you. All right, we'll do a roll call. Frank?
Aye.
Okay, Brian. Todd?
Aye.
Geetha?
Sorry. Mhm.
Okay.
Aye.
All right, John?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
And Mark?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
And I'll do an aye too. This is Lisa.
Oh, Lisa, I didn't know you jumped on.
That's okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
That's great. So the only one we're missing is John Miller then, unless he's jumped on. All right. Okay, so that's reaffirmed. Meg, do you need anything else from us on that?
No, not at all. That was just, it was a procedural question. We had a question about it last meeting, so I just happened to email her that night. She got back to me after the meeting. So no, we're all set. It's a matter of record now, so.
Great. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to Lynch. Action items, project delivery determination, which we did. B, design massing materials from Charlie.
Okay, so I'm going to try sharing my screen again, and we'll see how that all goes. It's always a drama for me.
It's a drama for all of us, Charlie, honestly, after this much time.
What I want to do is that. So theoretically, you can see the screen now.
Yes.
You see you're seeing the show. Okay. So first of all, let me just say I've had a glitchy internet connection today, so I apologize in advance if something goes catastrophically wrong and I disappear or freeze or whatever. You can move on with your meeting, and I apologize. It's unusual, but it does happen occasionally.
Charlie, why don't you turn your camera off now, if you don't mind, just to save yourself a little bandwidth. And I think we can still see your presentation.
I'm choosing not to be hurt by that. Okay.
There you go.
So quick status update, schematic design. We had a very productive security meeting with the district recently with our security consultant. That went very well. Got the sort of general parameters of a strategy, not in great detail, but enough for the schematic design narrative and enough to understand a little bit more about the district's goals. We have issued the schematic design estimate package to both TAPA's estimator and Hill's estimator. So they are both now currently working on that. And that includes, you know, sort of narratives and drawings and the like. They'll be working on that for a few more weeks. We have a technology meeting with the district upcoming in a week. And then of course we have the MSBA submission package, which is due on September 1. The table of contents for that submission will look something like this. This is a draft, but this is pretty consistent with what we expect it to look like. It'll have, you know, the final, or not final, none of it's final. It'll have the updated space template and sort of narratives around that. It'll have an introduction that talks about the preferred option with images. It will have various narratives from the various consultants around the various systems and the like. It will have a lead scorecard and a certification from us of what we're submitting. It will have code analysis. And then of course, the key stuff is it will have two cost estimates and a significant spreadsheet, which will form the basis of your PFA with the MSBA ultimately. There'll be schedules, work plans, and the like, and then there's some other supporting documentation that goes with it. So that is sort of kind of the basic premise of the schematic design submission. In terms of design update topics, this is an updated site plan. Won't look dramatically different, but I'm presenting them as they get updated. One of the things the district wanted to do is move the larger play area closer to the school, which we've done, and move the turf play field farther from the school, which we've done. We've also increased its size somewhat. Other than that, we have moved the playground to the north, slightly west, which gets it fully out of the 500-year floodplain. As we mentioned in the last meeting, there's no regulatory requirement that you can't have a play structure in 500-year floodplain. Nonetheless, it seems like good practice from a resiliency point of view to get it out of there. Beyond that, the plan is pretty consistent with where we were 2 weeks ago. We still have one more change to make, which is we're probably going to relocate some parking spaces from the very easterly edge of this parking area. They most likely will go down in the southerly part of the site, and so that we won't have much of a loss of parking spaces. However, we're trying to get as much as much paving out of the 100-year setback as we possibly can, so that we don't want any gain from the existing condition to the proposed condition of pervious. So that's the current site plan. One interesting thing that we were thinking about and that I thought I would bring up, and it doesn't need resolution necessarily, but it is something that if this project moves forward, we do need to do some thinking about. If the town wants to maintain the soccer fields during construction, we need to find a way to get folks over to it. And the only obvious solution that we came up with was to say to the contractor, okay, contractor, you get within this black dashed line essentially to build your building, which is plenty of site. However, you don't get to take the existing lower parking lot that is next to and east of the Lynch near Horn Pond Brook for much of the duration of construction. If we do that, we can maintain about 20 spaces outside of the construction enclosure, just those existing, literally those existing spaces. And somebody who parked there could walk up the existing gravel road that's there now, pathway, and get and curl around and get onto the soccer fields. Ultimately, that gravel road, the edge of that gravel, the easterly edge of that gravel road becomes the easterly edge of the paved access road around the back. So at some point we have to give that access up. But it's a reasonable strategy for getting people on and off the soccer field. But within that being said, it's only 20 spaces and there's no overflow there. So there has to be a discussion about how many spaces you need to run any programs at the soccer field and whether that's an acceptable solution. And again, I'm not sure we need to get deep into this, but I think it should be on everybody's radar screen to talk about it at some point. I don't know if anybody has any comments about it now.
I was going to talk to Nick at the rec department to see what, if those fields were not available to him, what would that do to his programming? So, and to Margarita as well. So I think, Frank, that does the JV or freshmen still play out there on that ball field? So I was supposed to follow up with those guys, and I'll do that.
So worth a conversation, and
Yeah.
and even if we did do this, it wouldn't be seamless. There'd still be this moment where there'd be a changeover, and we'd still be giving up the entire site to the contractor because they'd have to finish the site work, and there wouldn't be any access, or we'd have to flip-flop over and give them access from the west once the new parking lot was complete. But then, of course, that's that means the contractor has to finish that early. So there's various pros and cons to all of this, but this was our only kind of obvious thought. So we put this into the schematic estimate package, and it probably carries with it a modest premium. I don't think there's any harm in having a modest phasing premium. I don't think it's a big deal. It doesn't impact their construction schedule in a major way, and probably is not a huge headache for a contractor to have this one modest sort of glitch in terms of their flow, sort of critical path. So that's that.
Jay,
Oops.
Geetha has a question.
Hey, Geetha. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I was asking a question about the proposed site drainage, and how do I phrase it? With the drainage, if it's being proposed, and if the field, I have two-part question. With the drainage, are we intending to store any of the storm drains in the field in the proposed improvement? And then if they want the field to continue to be used, how would that impact? I sort of had a layered question, how the site is going to be drained. Obviously, we do not have a clear picture of the existing site drainage. When I say we do not, I guess, and then how it's being proposed that it would not impact the field, or is it going to be stored there? And what,
So I didn't include the last presentation 2 weeks ago. We did include, I believe, a civil drawing that showed a kind of conceptual layout for site drainage. I didn't include it today. I'm not the civil engineer, but my strong impression is there's no intention of storing anything in terms of stormwater on the fields. The intent is to stay within this black enclosure here. That's the limit of work line and the construction. That's the construction fence and the limit of work line. Most of this is going to be managed, I believe, up in here. The major drainage, kind of underground detention and storage is under the parking lots. There's proposed structures in multiple locations. There are also rain gardens in multiple locations that to manage stormwater. So I don't believe that there's any intent of doing anything on this field except for touching the edge of it.
I see. I was in the meeting too. I know you brought up the rain garden. And let me ask you this, once we sort of, exhaust all the rain garden and whatnot, is there anything going to be exiting the site and and where does it go? Does it go to Horn Pond Brook or where would it go in the future?
No, I don't believe it would ever drain into Horn Pond. I think it's being controlled and then piped. Or it's the rainwater garden, the rain gardens, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I had a layered question. Are we done saying we are 100% recharging back into the site? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what we have to do, isn't it?
I wanted to confirm, and I had a follow-up question to Jay, but since you brought up the field, but all right. I will reserve it at some other time, but yes, being in that meeting, Charlie, I had these questions in my mind and I wasn't clear set. And are they looking into some sort of an aspect in the schematic design to explain what our intentions are, something like that?
Yeah, so the schematic design package will have a narrative with it that'll explain the rationale for the design. As well as some version of the diagram I presented at the last meeting.
Yeah,
And I can ask for some kind of description for the next meeting and share it with you.
Yeah, okay. And the 500-year flood line, too, that, we need to give some references, right? How we come up with it, just to say where we are pulling those lines from, right? To when you're providing a narrative as well. The schematic design, correct? You agree?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Colleen has a question and then Chris. Colleen?
Great. Sorry, I'm simultaneously on a community meeting for the city of Boston, so I apologize for the background noise. I just wanted to mention, Geetha, that we had a quick touch on the strategy for infiltration on the site in the last sustainability meeting, but we wanted to have a follow-up and make sure that you were able to be there because we, had some thoughts and questions on the permeable pavement and our move away from that and, some of the other sort of natural infiltration techniques that would normally be a good coordination between niche and the landscape architect. So I will make sure we'll coordinate with your schedule to make sure whenever that happens, you are included in on that, but it's definitely a really important topic that we want to cover in the subcommittee too.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, Geetha, the latest site drawing from Niche that shows the infiltration approach and bioretention as well as the site piping is actually updated. It's on the project website, lynch2025.com. There's actually a little thumbnail of that. That's based on a much larger, more detailed drawing. So I think there's a concept there about piping and moving water off site for storm.
For the descriptions and go from there, when this schematic design is going to be there. But okay, all right. But as we move along, Colleen and I'll take part in the meeting and try to answer the questions together with the designer, and we'll see. All right.
Anyone else? I don't see any other hands. Want to continue, Charlie?
Sure. So that's that topic. So the floor plans, I'm just flashing them up here. There's really nothing dramatic to report here that's changed. I'm just sharing them with you as they move along. We're sort of, this is what was submitted for the schematic design estimate. There's really almost no changes here. We did add a couple of single user bathrooms, but otherwise it's effectively the same plan as we had previously. We do have some interior stuff to share with you. This is an image of the lobby, really conceptual early image of the lobby with your back to the front door looking at the back door. And what you can see here is that there's the main stair, the main sort of monumental stair that goes up to the second floor only. The doors to the gym are on your left. The rear north-facing entrance is in front of you. The ramp we talked about is where this gentleman is walking, and the steps that go down to get you down to an elevation below the elevation of the platform, and the main elevation of the school is right here. We thought you could do something interesting under this stair. We thought you could have some benches over here. So it'd be a nice sort of lower lobby environment for kids and for visitors, for events, if we did something like that. We have a giant generic graphic on the right, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, which doesn't need to be that giant, but this is really early days. We're trying to just sort of sort this out. Here's a version of this looking the
Charlie,
other direct.
Could I just want to add how pleased I am to see that you used a ball-headed model. You just don't see that enough.
No, I know. We want
So I
to support,
appreciate that.
We
Thanks.
want to support people with hair loss.
Thank you.
This is going the other direction, looking at the front door, looking up at the main circulation spine, which extends through the entire building on the second floor. View into art up there. Here's that bench. Here's that other little platform thing. Maybe some kind of a wood ceiling in the lobby, some skylights, and again, early days, but just trying to give you a little bit of a feel for what we might end up doing in the long run. Here's some images from another school we did. We had great success. We've had good success with like porcelain tile flooring in a lobby because it's really, really rugged. We've done plenty of sort of vinyl graphics over the years, as you know, from VO. This has the art room off of the lobby, but then there's, that fun space under the stair. And we're not suggesting we're doing that, but what we're suggesting is there are opportunities for interesting sort of small scale spaces for small scale people to gather that are sort of can be impromptu or even organized. And then this is the same lobby looking the other direction, but you can see the big graphic on the wall, which is kind of cool, which goes from sort of music, it kind of transmogrifies itself ultimately from music to art. You can see into the music classroom. We might be able to get some transparency in our music classroom that might be kind of neat. And then at the end of the hall, this is pretty consistent with what we're doing for the proposed lynch. At the end of the hall is the main entrance, and then right next to it, the cafeteria entrance. So it's sort of that arrangement down at the end. This is the second floor corridor, and this would be looking up at the third floor, which would have glass. And you could see out of the third floor corridor and into the lobby. This is the second floor. That would have art on your right with some display cases, library on your right, and then moving into the to the rest of the building. This seems to show a closed single door. I am sure we would have open double doors, but and then some glass in the rear with some north light coming in. What we were thinking about is, at the VO, we did this big old, really neat graphic of the Vincent Owen sisters. And it may be that it makes sense to do something related to, if you keep the name, something related to the Lynch, is it brothers?
Yeah, the two brothers. That's right, Charlie.
Right. So there could be something kind of similar to this. We didn't dare take a pass at that at this early stage, so we stuck a Lynch hawk up there. But our thinking was we could do something along these lines that might be kind of great. That would be sort of educational and kind of explain the school's name's origin. We certainly don't have to do that, but it was just an idea.
And Frank, if that's something we want to pursue, the town's archivist has done a great job pulling together some information for us that we can dig into, offline, but some good stuff there to maybe work from.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love any photographs that would be appropriate like this, and any kind of, if there's text or any kind of more memoriam stuff that would be appropriate for a school, that would be awesome. So it's one option. There's plenty of other options out there. Cafeteria, really early sketch, but I mean, it shows high windows, lower windows in the corners. And again, there's a graphic here. We may not need a graphic, but nonetheless, there it is. Some sort of interesting kind of treatment of lights in the ceiling, perhaps. Interestingly, at the VO, it isn't dissimilar. There's a high window, And then there's sort of lower student scale windows below. So, you know, there is a kind of precedent there for this kind of a treatment, where you get kind of kid scale windows, and you could even do something with window seats and kids could hang out there or not. We could do higher sills if that's better from a sort of permeability point of view as well. So this stuff is so early that, you know, I almost hesitate to show it, but these are just sort of ideas of how this thing could develop. Here is a kindergarten kind of corridor classroom, outside a classroom. We're trying to think of something to do in the ceilings over that are sort of define these zones. We can do it with color in the floor. We can do it with something in the ceiling. We're not really sure what it would be yet. It'd be nice to have some kind of either graphics or at least paint colors that identified kind of zones and teams. We certainly haven't gotten into any deep thinking about that, but something along those lines might be pretty cool. We did this in this project where we did sort of change the ceiling plane and the floor plane to define a space. And that's sort of what we're thinking about with those lockers and also these kind of learning zones outside of classrooms in the upper 2 floors. We can do things like that might be kind of great. And then this is a typical classroom at this point, pretty generic. We haven't thought through the details of it. This is on the 1st floor, but, you know, opportunities for shelving, which a lot of teachers really like. And obviously there'll be a teaching wall. There'll be a place for carpet, probably for kiddos sitting on the floor. So that will come. But, you know, these are really early day kind of ideas about the interiors, but we wanted to share something with you because we did share stuff on the outside. So it seemed like worth sharing something on the inside, and we'll continue to develop these over the next month. And they will become more refined over time. So that's kind of the end of my presentation.
Charlie, quick question. Can you go back? I should have stopped you, but on the 1st floor
Where?
plan, the plan of the 1st floor.
Oh, all the way to the plan. We're
Yeah,
going way
sorry.
back in time.
It was discussed, that one right there, about a service corridor. So what is the idea, to cut through the kitchen to get?
No, so you don't cut through the kitchen, you just cut through the cafeteria.
Okay,
So see this white thing is a corridor.
right,
So you'd come out here and go into the cafeteria and through,
okay,
which we've done in other schools and nobody's really objected because the cafeteria is generally open and you should be able to walk back and forth. And it does mean if you wanted to, you could take deliveries from the front and come right into the cafeteria. Right now we have a door into the vestibule, so you could come in and come in again. And you could get into the back of house areas that way.
Is there any thought of, you know, going through there while it's in use? Is there any issues or?
Well, I think you don't have a big, you don't have heavy traffic going back and forth. I mean, it's generally staff, right? It's going to be
Right.
people who have some reason to be in the back needing to come to the front, but I wouldn't
Okay.
expect it to be a lot of folks.
Right.
And there's sort of a natural circulation zone in here because generally speaking, we need to lay out the tables farther out away from there anyway, because this is point of sale for the cafeteria and circulation for the cafeteria and the like.
Thank you.
So it's generally not furnished right in front of that wall.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Charlie before we move on?
I do.
Okay.
I just have some quick thoughts. I promise to make them quick. I loved seeing these plans, but especially the renderings. And I had just a couple of things that spoke to me about potential for the entryway with that large exposed wall. I've seen in a lot of other school projects that living walls where you have vegetation that can be either part of a stormwater, mitigation piece or a roof leader that comes down. Just thinking of ways to draw the outside in to the building. And that just feels like it's like a perfect place for something like that. And along those lines, thinking about sustainability and the education of all of the good and important moves that we've made in the building, as some of the lens of both the graphics, but what we did at MLK schools, we had some view windows in so that we could see a wall section, we could see into some of the facilities or the, mechanical rooms and things like that for recycling, gray water recycling and things like that. So those are just a couple of things that speak to me. It just feels like we're going to have all this beautiful surface area. And as we're thinking about graphics, also telling the story and just, carrying that line through both education of the folks that are using the building and then curriculum, I think is a great opportunity. And I had two more other quick things, unless you wanted to say something to those.
My only response is we're doing a living wall right now in a high school. It's been installed and it's pretty great. The only issue there is maintenance. It's just a question of whether the district wants to commit to it. So we actually showed one for a little while in this one of these renderings, and then we took it out because we were scared that it might not be a good idea. So we're perfectly willing to go there. It's just everybody has to say, yes, we're willing to take care of it.
Yep, exactly. And so I don't know who has the final authority, but just raising my hand to see, I think it's still a good idea, however much that weighs. Any thoughts on the sustainability education piece?
We're happy to try that. I mean, we certainly always have, the typical sort of lead required displays and all that, but you're talking about something more in depth, which is actually exposing some systems. And there's obviously two ways of that. You could put holes in the wall, or we could find a way to start exposing some piping and some ductwork and the like, that just letting the building teach a little bit about how systems work. And we're happy to try either of those.
Okay. The other thing along those lines, and I'm happy to pass on, hopefully with permission from the Tobin Montessori School in Cambridge, is that they started to look at the different parts of the building as elements, natural elements like fire and water and things like that, that gave each of the sort of communities their own identity. So that they sort of linked that through all the different biophilia elements that they were pulling into, both like carpet patterns and color palettes and things like that. That was really neat, because I haven't seen it that well integrated, so I'm happy to share that. And then the last thing, which is quick, I just wonder on the daylight side of things, I see all of this great exposure and all of these, beautiful windows. I just wonder at what point, if you haven't already, you're going to be looking at glare and, any of the.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it literally right now, because one of the problems is we're code-wise, we're not supposed to get much over 20%, or we start to take a hit. And so we're going through that exercise now to see where we are from a window to wall relationship.
Awesome. Okay.
So again, a lot of this is a placeholder till we actually refine it further.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Item C is Meg's fall meeting articles.
Okay, so sometime in September, the committee is going to need to vote both the article and then motion language for two articles that you will be sponsoring. The first is to reappropriate the remaining schematic design funds so that they could be used to further the project along through design development. And then the second one will be to appropriate the project funding agreement package, which will be the dollar amount that comes back to us, through the estimate and then through the MSBA. So that'll be the big one. And I think we'll have to do that by September 12th. So it's not that far away now.
Thank you. Any questions?
And just to clarify, Jay, so Meg, that's like our initial deadline, right? So we have a deadline on the warrant for an article.
Yep.
We have a little bit of wordsmithing, then we have like motion language, then we have background, so it can evolve a little bit, right?
Yeah. And we'll, to be honest, we'll give you the language. It's not going to be as complicated as last time where we had to try to separate those two, and it got overly complicated. Especially for the project funding agreement, that language is prescribed by the MSBA and will be carefully vetted by our bond counsel. So that will come to you, and you'll vote it. Same thing for the reappropriation. So there's nothing fancy. There's nothing You know, it's just taking the existing funds and reappropriating for different use. So I'll work with Mark Toogood and draft both of those and bring them to you.
Would it be helpful if I was going to go back and look at what we put together for VO for background language? I figured we could mirror something. I mean, just eventually we have to come up with background, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I was just
Yep.
going to go back at VO because I thought that was a good balance of, you know, high altitude, but just enough detail, and it summarized the process and so forth. So I'm happy to start drafting something for you and Jay if helpful.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Would you say, Meg, by that point, we need to have the approval from the MSBA, correct, on the schematic design? No? For the approach?
No, we do not need to have it. We just need to know, you know, it's based on their, the 2 cost estimates that are going to come back. What, you know, what amount of money we will be asking for at town meeting.
Okay, so that's not dictated by the MSBA meeting and the approval on the schematic design?
No, Geeta, what happens is that we will have two cost estimates looking at the schematic design, and they will, after reconciliation, we will have a dollar amount that we're comfortable with for the construction portion of the project. In addition to the construction dollars, we will allocate allowances and hold money that based on experience and what we know we'll need for the project, that will make up the total project dollar amount. And that is what the MSBA will look at and provide approval, but the language is kind of very prescribed, as Meg just noted. It's very prescribed, and it can happen independently to the MSBA's approval.
Okay. All right.
However, just related to Geeta's question, to remind people, the MSBA is scheduled to actually vote on the schematic approval on October 26th. So that would still precede fall town meeting.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, if we, you know, if we needed to make any changes on the fall town meeting, floor of town meeting, you know, that's something that could happen as well.
Okay. So that's a good segue for what's next, Jay. You want me to I'll throw this schedule up from the website. We want to talk about the vote.
I think Hill was going. Vivian, are you taking this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. I can start, and please, Chris, feel free to interject. I'm sure you and I both will have information providing for this. So not much has changed for the beginning portions of this project. Our schematic design is still due to the MSBA September 1st, and we're working towards that deadline. And as well as Chris just noted, that the MSBA Board of Directors meeting to officially approve our project scope and budget for this project is scheduled for October 26th. Town meeting, it was discussed, and there is I think a benefit to the project if this project was pushed towards fall town meeting. And with a debt exclusion override, instead of in January, to happen in November. I'm correct? November 8th or 10th time?
Yeah,
November 8th.
November 8th.
Yeah, November 8th would be, so originally the debt exclusion override vote was tentatively scheduled for January
2023.
7th.
7th?
Yeah.
Yeah, January 7th of 23. And town meeting is, regardless of when the debt exclusion override vote, the first night of fall town meeting this year will be November 10th. And it doesn't mean that this item will be voted on the 10th, but it should be voted sometime between the 10th and the 17th.
Correct. So if we have a debt exclusion override vote in sometime in November between the 10th and the 17th.
No, the debt override vote is scheduled for, so there's a state election on November 8th this year. And the town clerk, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the town clerk and the select board chair, Jay, Chris wasn't there, Jay, Frank, and Vivian were on the call. And the town clerk felt very strongly that she wanted us to move the vote from January to November, and she had a lot of very, very valid reasons why. We had a very lengthy and productive conversation, and the consensus at the end of the meeting was that, yes, it made more sense to move the vote to the town election date of November 8th. So Jay had, the select board chair was very concerned that this did not negatively impact the project, and Jay said that, we would bring it back to the committee for discussion. And if there were no, there wasn't a major, opposition to it, that date of November 8th would stick. So it looks like November 8th would be the vote. And then sometime either the 10th, the 14th, or the 17th, town meeting would then vote it.
And with that, we felt that we were in agreement with the town clerk in having the vote earlier, that we would see it being more beneficial to the project. Therefore, with the vote done in November, the design can move forward from the design portion could move forward, and in hopes that the 100% construction documents from spring, summer of 2023 can definitely be closer to the spring of 2023 and be able to start construction in the summer of 2023.
We have Mark and then Geetha. Mark?
What are the drawbacks of voting earlier rather than later?
Well, Chris will have one. I'm going to tell you that, one drawback is going to be is the town going to think that we're pulling something on them by pushing this through after a summer. After seeing what's in the news with other schools and everything, I think we just need to my feeling is we have to get the word out, and this is to gain time. We have an end date, and if we can gain a couple months on the beginning date without anyone thinking that we're pulling one on them, that's my thought. But
yeah,
Chris,
there's definitely benefits to not having any lag between the September 1st schematic design due date to the town vote of January. So that's time lost that we could recoup and use towards design development and keeping the design forward.
Okay,
But if I can make a counterpoint though, Vivian, Winchester's never gone that fast. That we typically wait until you get an MSBA approval. And for those in the committee that are not aware, there's a 120-day clock. Once they vote, it's 120 days, right, Vivian? When
Correct.
they vote on October 26th, the town has to secure funding. There's two things we have to do. That requires project funding agreement approved by town meeting, and you need a debt exclusion override vote. Because that clock is that period's only 120 days, we have to do one of two things. You either have a regular town meeting and you have a special election, or you can have a special town meeting and a regular election. That's the way we typically think of it. And that time that we have on the clock before that, either that first town meeting or certainly the override, is sort of a period of time where we basically educate the community. It's what we did for the high school, what we did for VO. What is it? Why do we need it? How much is it going to cost? When's it going to be available? What does it look like? Because people kind of want to know what they're paying for. So if we go in November, what's really exciting is if it passes, then we're like off to the races because it's practically on top of fall town meeting. If in some sort of tragic scenario, it should fail in November, we don't automatically get disqualified by the MSBA. That 120-day clock continues to run. So it would be similar to what happened at Skilling's Field years ago. For those of you who remember, Skilling, there was a vote no to put in the turf at Skilling's Field at town meeting. Then there was a ballot question. The voters supported it, and then it came back to town meeting, and town meeting said, okay, well, if the voters want it, then I guess we have to do it. So, similarly, a project could, if a project should fail in November, we could theoretically try again in January, but there's no time for redesign or anything. The project will be what it is. It just means in my mind, we have a much shorter runway to really communicate, because we're not going to know, for instance, what this project costs until basically the schematic gets submitted September 1st. So we've got 4 weeks to communicate, 4 or 5 weeks to communicate. And that time will go quickly. And to some degree, you know, because we've done it differently, the town may expect something else. And I agree with Jay. Some people may wonder, wait, why are you doing this? We thought it was January. There will be just as many people who don't remember when we were going to have the debt exclusion because they don't pay attention to this kind of thing.
I would say there's more in that camp.
Yeah.
In my circle of friends.
Meg could be exactly right. It just means, Mark, the runway is shorter is what it means. And that has everything to do with communication. On the other hand, that is why we set up the website. I mean, this was just updated over the weekend, latest developments here. And we actually I've updated the design page. So everything that Charlie just showed, well, with respect to floor plans, everything you just saw is now up on the website. None of the interior stuff is there. So we've got some tools that, you know, we can continue to leverage in terms of communicating. My last comment, Mark, would only be that I think if we vote in November, I think each PTO will have met only once. And that's another sort of platform, you know, that we've used in the past to communicate on major school projects, what they are and why, and where to get information. So I just think it's going to happen very quickly, and we just need to be aware of that.
Geetha had a question also. Geetha?
My question was, you know, if you have that previous slide in front of us, I'm all along with Chris and educating the public and whatnot. When I'm getting hung up on the line item, the approval by the MSBA, yes, we would have two cost estimate. We would, you know, whatever the term, compare against each other at the allowance and come up with the total project cost. If I remember correctly, if MSBA is also part of the game, don't we then bring up the reimbursement ratio there and then subtract that and then go back to the community to say this is what be the cost against you and something like that? So I'm just wondering, what is the, you know, the August 26th approval date if it goes south? What would be the game plan? That's the part I'm getting concerned.
So before I answer if you have a second part to your question, the first part, the October 26th date is, yes, it's a formal meeting with the board of directors. And yes, it's the formal approval for the project scope and budget. However, prior to that, we'll already know. So the October 26th date is more of like a formality meeting with the MSBA. And leading up to the October 26th, there will be various conversations and meetings internally with MSBA members to understand the full project, as well as go line by line through the budget to make sure that they understand it and all the information that we provide to them. So if it's going to go south, as you know, I'll use your words, that we would know it before the October 26th date and have course correction available as well.
But Vivian, can I just ask Geeta's question a little more pointed? I'm glad Geeta, the way you phrased that question. So in the basic SD submittal, for instance, we're going to have some measure of solar. We have to for the lead points, but beyond that, as Colleen and others know, we're talking at the sustainability table about what extra solar we want, whether it's on the roof or canopies or what have you. It seems to me that we may be making decisions along the way that perhaps increase our incentive points for reimbursement, which is I think what Geeta was getting at. So not just the project cost, but what percentage do we get back? I wonder if you or Charlie can speak to where in that timeline between, let's say, September 1st when we first submit and October 26th, where in that timeline are we finalizing any number of design moves that we might make, which may increase our reimbursement rate? And is it possible that we won't know a final I mean, we have a floor right now, but we might not actually know our reimbursement rate until as late as October 26th or the week before. I think that's an important question to understand because that'll be part of the communication to the voters.
You should know on September 1st what the reimbursement rate is. The only wild card would be the maintenance points, I think, unless that's already been issued by the MSBA.
I don't think
So-
the maintenance points have been issued yet. I could check
Okay.
with the MSBA. I haven't seen it come through.
Okay. So in other words, Chris, we know you want the two reimbursement points for sustainable design. So the project willy-nilly is designed to that.
Okay,
So really there's a couple of wild cards that are part of the MSBA's, their calculus, which I certainly don't know quite how they reach their decisions on that. So I'm no expert, but they will let you know what you're going to get for reimbursement on maintenance points. But
Well-
otherwise, I think we know on September 1st.
okay. So Geeta, I'm sorry, you had another part of your question. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I mean, so as the last one I was going to ask, even if we have the 2 articles in the town one, and then God forbid, if we don't have the approval, then could we then still have the debt exclusion vote or something like that? That was the question coming into my mind. In other words, without the so-called, I mean, just, I wanted to have that answer. I mean, yes, I get it. October 26th, the last date that we would hear back, but God forbid, could that scenario happen? Could we have the debt exclusion vote even though we do not have the approval?
No, the MSBA will not allow you to vote, will not allow a community to vote without the agreed board meeting where they agree to the project and they agree to the project funding agreement. So
Right.
you can't proceed to a vote without that step. So the only scheduling issue here is you can't vote in advance of a board meeting.
The town clerk did run these dates by MSBA before even coming to us to confirm that they would all work without upsetting anyone. And they were all approved that the dates all work.
Right, as long as, it's that magic 120 day after the MSBA Board of Directors. If you chose to go to town vote at day 2 or day 119, it's irrelevant to them as long as it meets within the 120 days.
And I mean, this is actually, these dates are pretty consistent with what a whole lot of communities try to do, because they try to go to a fall town meeting and then they try with it quite quickly, and then they aggressively schedule and I know you're doing it the other way around, but they then aggressively schedule their indebtedness vote for within a week or 2, because they want to get the project going with the same goal as you, which is to be in, a couple of years later. So this is not inconsistent with what the MSBA sees all the time. The only thing here is this flip-flopping the
Town meeting.
override with
Right.
the town meeting vote.
Anyone else?
My only other observation, Jay, would be just the EFPBC has in the past on the high school and the VO. And I think we had some informational meetings on the McCall expansion as well. We will need to have some virtual meetings, some community meetings with Winchester to explain the project and give people every opportunity to learn about it beyond just keeping the website up to date. So I think we will all need to be kind of on our toes and work hard to try to find those windows in the schedule to make something like that work. So we can be really clear and consistent on the messaging and not really getting many. We had a flurry of questions maybe 6 weeks ago through the website. Haven't had much more recently, but that's still there and it works. So you just need to be ready for that. I think it's going to be busy.
It is. It is. Geetha, you're all set? Your hand's still up. Okay. All right. We can, moving on to Winchester High School update. Meg?
I do not really have anything.
Okay.
Wade sent me an email today looking to schedule. This is really for John and Chris out there. He's looking to schedule a call to discuss the proposed protocol by Consigli for their follow-up inspections, and then to discuss the status of the annual inspections for the extended warranty. So you'll see an email from me probably tomorrow, trying to set up a meeting to talk about that. And that's
And on the
it.
bathroom project, you said that the submittals have been approved.
Submittals have been approved and I have the contract back from them signed, so I'll get it signed on the town side. So Chris, I'll coordinate if you're still on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Conway,
Chris Conway. Sorry. Sorry, Chris.
he's with us. He's with us.
I'll coordinate with you on, getting access, because I'm sure it's, maybe it'll be done by the end of the month, but somehow I doubt it. So I'll have to coordinate access during the school days. A bathroom at a time or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Any
Can
questions?
I ask Chris Conway raise your hand if he had anything to say? 'Cause we could elevate him. I can't do it myself. Yeah, Frank, can you elevate Chris? He wanted to weigh in.
Sure, just a second. Hold on, Chris. See some panelists now.
There he is. Chris, you're on mute.
Good evening.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, one thing is Consigli has reached out to schedule their first visit with their director of quality and things like that. It hasn't, we haven't landed it yet, but they have reached out to schedule a visit. Was that something, Meg? Did you?
Oh, no, I was waving
Okay.
goodbye to someone. Sorry.
We did have a little bit of flooding in the parking lot. Small amount, but we did have some. We got some information from that and sent that off to engineering, and that was last week, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
How are we on that whole project with the?
So it doesn't look like, we're spending a lot of money on this roof issue and now the bathrooms, which isn't a ton of money, but it just doesn't look like there'll be enough remaining high school funds to do that. So the Beth Rudolph put in for an appropriation into the FY24 capital plan. So, I'm not going to hold my breath that it will get approved and make it all the way through. But it's on the list. So
It was her fourth priority out of 4 projects.
exactly. Out of a lot of other requests.
Other important projects. I should say.
Every single request is extremely important. There's no doubt about it.
Okay,
But there's only so many dollars out there.
that's right. All right, we have, before I start with the high school, Chris, anything else you want to mention? Or?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think everything that you folks are aware of is plugging along, and it's always something different, but most of the things we can overcome.
All right, thank you, Chris. So next we have payments authorizations that was just sent out before the meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at the request?
I'll pull that up, Jay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So we have Hill 14,620, Tapé for 45,000 even, and Frida for 465.82.
I'm happy to make a motion to authorize payment to OPM Hill International, Tapé Architects, and Frida Canavan for secretary services as presented.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Geetha. All right. So we will go Frank,
Aye.
Geetha, John,
Aye.
Lisa,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Todd,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
All right, so that's all passed. I'll get that
And
over.
Colleen, I.
Colleen, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yep. All right, so we'll get that over to you, Meg. And next is
Thank
meeting
you.
dates. We have penciled in for the 22nd of August, the 29th, and a hold for September 12th if we need it, which we probably will.
So we will be needing the 22nd and the 29th.
We'll need both.
I believe so.
Okay.
We want to make sure that whatever information we have prepared for submission prior to the September 1st, we are communicating to this EFPBC prior and having authorization to submit on your behalf.
And
Vivian?
my understanding is we might have estimates on August 22nd, but we're going to be voting to authorize submittal of SD on the 29th. Is that still the case? Estimates on the 22nd, Charlie, or am I off?
You're off by a day. We have estimates on the 23rd, reconciliation on the 25th.
Okay.
So we might do it is vote to submit on the 22nd and then review the costs on the 29th. That way it gives us opportunity to get everything prepared, but not officially make a submission until we've reviewed the costs with the committee. We'll see how we kind of.
May I ask a quick question, Vivian? The cost estimate by both TAPE and you, are you expecting by the divisions, or is it just going to be at the scale of cost per square foot? You know, is it going to get to the detail of by each specs division? So I forget, how is it at the schematic design level?
It is by division. I mean, they do a detailed, well, I mean, it's not literally by division, but it is by trade and by scope. And they do their best to do takeoffs, and they do their best to assign values to those takeoffs. However, they at this level are still to some degree making a host of assumptions. But the thing is that they have so much data on what other schools are doing that they can make a pretty reasonable, educated guess. But they're not drawings that you could literally build from, right? So you can't literally take them off. But I think that, yes, these schematic design estimates are relatively detailed.
Okay, all right.
And both firms, Geeta, if it kind of helps give you reassurance, both firms, TAPE has PMNC, who has done thousands of schools in the Commonwealth, as well as our firm, being AM Fogarty, has done just as many.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning of the project, Vivian, perhaps maybe we would also look at the differences by each divisions as well too, from the two estimators too, sort of, I don't know, just asking, you know.
Well, they have to do a reconciliation, so that would be
Right,
by division.
we
By
will be
division,
doing,
okay.
we will be doing a reconciliation, Geeta, and I'd be happy, I don't want to make it completely public of a document,
Right.
but I'd be happy to share it with the EFPBC. And when, during our presentation in regards to the costing, at a higher level, we'll not only give you what PMNC's costs will be coming in, we'll also give you what our firm, AM Fogarty, will be coming in, so that you can do a little bit of a comparison as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vivian, do you come back to the EFPBC? I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't see your hand up.
Oh, go ahead.
Would you come back to the EFPBC on the 29th with the total project costs on top of that? I mean, all together.
I would like to, and I'm not going to make any promises, but that would be a goal.
I mean, in theory, that's part of the document that goes in on the first. So-
Right, that's what I figured.
So
yeah.
if I don't have it very soon after, we already should, and we'll be making it available to the EFPBC, what is submitted to the MSBA.
Just a reminder, anything you share with the EFPBC is a public document, so we just need to keep that in mind.
Right, I'm a little uneasy, yes. Some of these internal documents may want to stay internal, at least initially.
I would agree, just so we get through some vetting. And I'm glad Meg asked her question, because the one thing I wanted to pose was related to total project cost. Vivian, I'm going to ask Charlie this question, but I'm going to ask you first. What is your understanding of what contingencies you think we should be carrying that would be rolled into the project cost, and at what percentage?
So we have two contingencies that we will be holding. One is a soft cost contingency, which is primarily the owners, and then one that is related to construction. At this stage, obviously, whatever contingencies we hold as the design develops will lower the percentages, because the contingency will get absorbed into the design. But at this point, I think I had it already identified at what percentage I would be using internally, at least. And we were looking at maybe a total of 10%, 8 to 10%.
Each?
No, combined.
8 to 10 combined. Okay. And now, Charlie, can I ask you the same question?
Well, I don't build the budget, but on design bid build, we see 8 to 10% on construction contingency, and then that's not the owner's contingency.
Right. So
the owner's contingency is above that.
Yeah. So I would agree. I mean, I was gonna, if it was going to be an ad reno, 10% would be dangerous. In a real sense, it's like a greenfield site. So maybe 8 to 10% for construction contingency is fair, although Charlie will remember the one area where we went over budget on VO was actually hazardous material abatement and demolition. Remember that, Meg? We found a whole bunch of nasty ACM stuff on the foundation there. So I would presume our construction contingency, Vivian, would be 10%. And then on top of that, something on the owner's contingency. Some people may call that a design contingency. Owner can change their mind or what have you.
Absolutely.
I wanted to bring this up only because these are the things for which Fogarty and Peter Bradley, they have to be in agreement. I mean, whatever we decide the number should be. The lower we go, the greater the risk. Meg, do you have any thoughts or suggestions at this stage on what we should be carrying?
This would be above what the cost estimators would be estimating.
Right.
Yeah, but it all goes into when we say project cost.
Right. It
We're
goes
still
into project
carrying
cost, but
a project.
They're right, but they won't carry what they carry. The only thing is the estimators carry is a design contingency.
Right.
And they'll make a professional judgment on what they think the design contingency should be. And that's really the contingency that ultimately gets absorbed. You know, it goes from whatever it goes from 15% to 12% to 8% to 5%, you know, with each submission. The other ones are built into the budget by you all and by Vivian. And there's you know, the owner contingency, there's not a whole lot in an owner contingency. It is soft, you know, it's contingency for soft costs, right? Oh my God, we have to do a new survey. Oh my God, we hit a, you know, Indian burial ground. We have to hire an archaeologist. Oh, you know.
Careful, that stuff happens.
I know it does. Or maybe we need more furniture than we realized, or we really want more technology and we're above the cap, and those kind of things. The construction contingency, of course, is more to do with how the builder does and how much.
Yeah.
How many
Well, so
change orders there are.
I just wanted to raise this tonight because on a project of this scale and this cost, any contingency, whether it's 8 or 10%, that's a lot of money. And there is some risk. The lower you go, the earlier you go lower. So to some degree, I think this is something the EFPBC should, you know, discuss and kind of be comfortable with. I mean, Jay, unless I'm speaking out of turn,
I agree.
And we don't have to settle it right now, but I just wanted to have an idea about where we thought these early estimates were going to come in terms of assumptions around that.
Brian, you had a question?
Yeah, related to that. So if we have a big miss because of construction cost escalation between now and when we bid the job, or a big miss on the modulars, that's an issue for owner's contingency, right? To Chris's point.
Yes, I mean, any contingency is a hedge against uncertainty. So you know, if you allot 10% for construction contingency and you end up with 5% change orders, that other 5% you are free to spend on modulars or problems with modulars and things like that, right? So and the same goes for the owner's contingency. The only tricky thing is that Vivian has to switch it between different categories with the MSBA, which I understand is a bit of a headache.
Yeah.
But in theory, it's your money to spend. So if you decide to deploy it in a different way, you can.
I would think we'd want to take a close look, particularly at what escalation assumptions are built into the estimates we're getting, and
so the estimate will the estimate will build in an assumption on escalation, and it will build in a design contingency. Those are the two sort of plug numbers, multipliers that go into the construction estimate. So
right,
anything to do with construction contingency and anything to do with owner's contingency are above and beyond what's in the estimate.
right. But so I guess I'm agreeing with Chris and saying at this moment in time, assumptions about future escalation are much more uncertain than they historically are. And
That's
so,
an understatement.
right. And so we should probably be more conservative and cautious than normal in budgeting owner's contingency. And we should, in reviewing the estimates, pay close attention to what the estimators are using for their assumption, because it's a guess.
I mean, this is a dance, right? Because the reality, the unfortunate reality is everyone is going to just faint over dead when they see this estimate, I imagine, because costs are increasing so quickly that we're just really struggling with square foot numbers. So then it's going to be, well, not only are we alarmed by the size of the construction estimate that we've received, but how much are we willing then to add on top of that as allowances? The more you're willing to add, the safer you are and the better hedge you have. But at what point do you feel like you can't take it to the voters anymore? So it's an owner judgment about, you know, it's a risk management issue and ultimately a political one around budget as well.
Well, I would offer, Charlie, just given, I mean, you're doing great work, but given the level of detail you've got, given what's going on in the market, in our past experience, getting rid of VO where something went wrong we never anticipated, I would presume we would have not less than 10% construction contingency unless others felt differently.
That's a pretty standard plug number that gets put into these projects. It's pretty typical.
Right.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jay.
Anyone else? All right, it's gonna be a busy month.
Like a motion to adjourn?
All right, thank you, Chris. Second?
Second.
Mark, thank you. Frank?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Yes.
Brian? Brian?
Yes.
Todd?
Aye.
Geetha?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned at 7:17, and everyone have a great night.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jay.
Guys.
But Eric, you want to go ahead?